Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ferrigno Freedom Channel. I'm Dante Ferrigno, and I'm back for another carnivore conversation. Today, we're going to be speaking with Jason Smith. He is affectionately known as the Blind Jedi. He also has a YouTube channel called Independently Blind, and he is joining me right now. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him into the call. So, how you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. It's a privilege and an honor for you to reach out and do this interview, man. It's kind of funny because I just talked about you like a week ago on my channel because
Oh
I got
yeah,
the Dreo Chef here.
yeah. I saw that in your comments on the the form you submitted on my website.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I
that's
think I
awesome.
even said in that video, I said something on the lines of like, I have a lot in common with this guy, and I don't think I'll ever be able to meet him or talk to him. I said, but man, I'd like to thank him for showing me this thing, and then all of a sudden we connect. It was like it was a God thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. Yeah, well, that's interesting. I wasn't gonna come on and talk about the Dreo Chef Maker, but when you brought it up, I thought it was interesting because well, the folks don't know you yet, at least not on my channel
Right.
that might be watching, but you're legally blind, I understand.
I am.
So
I am, sir.
what is your vision? I guess the numbers. What is that? And tell me a little bit about what that means for you as far as your ability to see.
Okay, so I have a disease called Stargardt's disease, and it's a junior onset of macular degeneration. I was diagnosed at the age of 16. It's a progressive disease. So you hit legal blindness when your vision hits 2200, and I'm currently 2800.
Oh, Stargardt
So
disease. I'd never heard of
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I just basically use my peripheral. I have no central vision, so everything's blurred out. If you see me go in and out, it's me going towards my screen and zooming it up. I don't know if you can see behind me, there's a big monitor that I used to have set up here, and it worked
Yeah.
really well. It's just with the desk space that I have, it was a problem. So I'm waiting for Apple to actually come out with a 32-inch iMac that I could just have one spot for everything.
Yeah, I think
So
they used to have them, but they went to 27s, and that was the best they're doing right now. Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
like Apple
27 would
products.
probably work, but I keep hearing rumors they're going to come with the 32. So I'm trying to be patient.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I've
Yeah.
been working on a MacBook, so I'm probably killing my vision by looking at this 13-inch screen all the time. Not to mention my iPhone is the tiny little, just a regular size iPhone, and I'm constantly looking at that, running at a channel. And I swear my close-up vision is getting worse and worse as I keep looking at these small screens. But I don't
Well,
know
the
if
cool
that's a
thing
real
is,
thing or not.
yeah, the cool thing is Apple computers have so much accessibility. Like I'm all Apple. I have iPad, phone, watch,
Yeah.
and they all interchange with each other. And the accessibility. I use VoiceOver sometimes to read stuff to me, magnification. So it does a lot for me. So and they
Yeah, their
all coexist.
ecosystem is hard to break free from once you get caught in it. It's just so
Oh yeah,
convenient with everything working together. Like I'm currently using my phone as the camera, and it just turns on automatically when I have Ecamm on. So I was like,
yeah.
wow, this is convenient, and the quality of the picture is better than my old what do you call those things? I don't know, in
The
netcam or something like
webcam.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, the
webcam.
web.
That's it. So I just use
Well,
my
I know you
iPhone for
use
that.
this ZV1. You know you could hook your ZV1 up to Ecamm, right?
Yeah, I just haven't looked into how to set it up,
It,
but it wouldn't be that hard. I know it's got a USB port on here too, so on the
yeah,
MacBook. But I was going to
yeah,
ask you while we were talking about your disability, uh,
yeah.
the Dreo Chef Maker. Does that make it easier for you to see what's going on? Does it enlarge that any, or is it just whatever it is you can see that pretty well?
No. So I currently am using my magnification on my phone to set the settings. I've been
Okay.
trying to connect. For some reason, it's giving me a problem connecting to my phone, but I'm really trying to get it to connect to my phone because through my phone, I'll be able to zoom up, and then I should be able to use it with much more ease. You know, trying to use the magnifier and do it, it does work, and I've already memorized. Like when I hit beef, it takes me
How many
5 clicks
beeps?
down. Yeah, beeps, and then I go 5 clicks down, takes me right to ribeye, and then I'm good there. And then I know it's grill, fill the water, and then it's on sous vide already, and I just hit that, and I'm good to go.
Well, there's a firmware update that's going to change that a little bit. It already came out. You may not have installed it yet, but they've added some more settings for different styles of meat, which is kind of cool too. But anyway, we didn't come to talk about the Dreo Chef Maker. I just thought it was interesting, and I wanted to get your thoughts as a site challenge, whatever. I don't know. I guess you don't mind the word blind because you call yourself the blind Jedi. You know,
that's right.
We live in such a weird time. It's hard for me to know what to say that's not going to be offensive to somebody, but there's a part of me that really doesn't care because, doggone it, I'm trying to communicate a thought. Let's just talk.
100%. And most people that, it all depends on where they're at in their blindness journey, but you could say anything. You could say, can you see that? Or it's good to see you. That's fine. It's all words. We take it the same way.
That's fantastic, man. Well, I'm glad to hear that. You're 49 years old.
Yes, sir.
And you started the Lion Diet on March 1st of this year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's so were you doing just a standard diet before that, just eating whatever, or had you already transitioned from keto or something like that before?
I've been all over the place, obviously, like most people. I was doing the standard American diet when I would try to get in shape or do fitness. It was standard American diet all the way, lean meat, healthy fats. But with my Crohn's disease, it was making me more sick, and I didn't realize it until I started this diet.
Okay. How long have you had Crohn's disease?
Since I was 22, so it's been about 27 years, going on 28.
I don't know a whole lot about Crohn's disease. Is that something that's acquired, or is that genetic, or something caused it?
It's funny because they claim it's an autoimmune disorder, so they claim that it's genetic. However, going down the rabbit hole of carnivore and how fast the symptoms went away when I stopped eating all the bad stuff, is it really genetic, or is it more just the foods we eat, right? So that's the big question out there. From a science perspective, they say genetics, but I say more food.
Okay. See, I started with leaky gut was what led me to Lion Diet. And so I know they're different illnesses, or leaky gut isn't even technically a diagnosis according to doctors. They just call it stomach permeability or stomach lining permeability or intestinal permeability. But it has a lot of the same symptoms where you got pain in your gut area and digestion is awful. And I noticed that immediately too, that my symptoms went away within days. How long did it take for you to notice any change in your symptoms?
It took me roughly 3 weeks. And I have a stricture, which is, the closure, right? My small intestine, where my small intestine meets my colon. I didn't know how bad it was until basically 3 weeks into the carnivore diet. I had a colonoscopy, and they almost put me in the operating table because I was already closed. They were able to open it up with some balloon device or something. So I'm still mostly closed. I'm partially open. I'm begging them to go back in and try to open it more. But once they were able to open me up a little bit, that's when all my symptoms went away on this diet.
Okay. So I'm not familiar with the term stricture. I guess you're saying that it was keeping it from letting things out of your small intestine into the colon?
Yeah. So with Crohn's disease, it's your white blood cells that attack that area. It could attack anywhere in your gut, but primarily it usually attacks where the small intestine and the colon meet. And that's where mine's been attacking for 28 years. And so what that ends up happening is a lot of inflammation, cause bleeding, and then the scar tissue. So the scar tissue has created a stricture where it's blocking the passageway for things getting out. Yes.
Okay. So they're still working on that for you. What were the symptoms like that you were having? I kind of wanted to go into your history first, but I also like the way conversations flow. And I think that's the best way to do an interview anyway. What were your symptoms like when you were before Lion Diet?
Man, this will go down a rabbit hole here. So there's so many different things, right? And as you know, dealing with leaking gut, there's so much things that could happen when your gut gets infected. Anything that happens with your gut affects your whole body. So immediately my energy level has been low. And before I was diagnosed with Crohn's, I was very, very high strung. I'm ADD, ADHD. Like, I was never a video game guy. Never liked to sit down and watch TV. You get me outside, I would be up when the sun came up and didn't come back into the house till it was dark. So that was the first thing I noticed, was my energy level was depleted. The worst part of it was,
when you started Lion Diet, or when you had Crohn's, your energy level?
When I got diagnosed with Crohn's, energy depletion, big time. Joint pain, the arthritis type pain, that's where the discomfort really comes in. I mean, every single joint in your body aches: elbows, fingers, ankles. Everything just hurt so bad. And then over time, with all the scar tissue, because I had a surgery when I was 25. So 3 years after being diagnosed with Crohn's, they had to remove some of my colon and some of my small intestine.
And then those went away within 3 weeks, but it also coincided with the balloon procedure that they did.
Yeah, because that helped release, right? And I still have small bit of pain on my right abdomen from here and there, just because I think things get backed up there a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's manageable. But literally 3 weeks in, it was like a switch got flipped. And all of a sudden I was like really energetic again, and I was in zero pain. My wife is astonished by it. She's like, she's still a skeptic, to be honest with you, but she also knows that she sees a big difference in me, especially, I'm in the gym 6 days a week.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for people to wrap their brain around this, because it's like the opposite of everything we've been told. And it's almost like you become a heretic to modern science if you don't accept the thing you've been told all your life. So I don't hold it against anybody when they're still skeptical, because it's such a difficult thing to wrap your head around. But when you've had those problems and then they go away, it's hard to be a skeptic anymore. It's like having the Messiah come and put his hand on you. and now you're like, I'm healed.
And I'm telling you, that's what it felt like. And I was a skeptic going in. And that's kind of why I started documenting my journey. I did it twofold. Number one, it keeps you accountable to a certain degree, because I love making content. I have several different channels, and I actually create a podcast for my job as well. I just love doing this stuff. So I was like, I'm going to document this. This will be fun. And I did it on my channel, and where I focus a lot on blindness, but now it's turned into this whole other thing where I could actually work on so many different things. But the main reason I wanted to document it is because I've been searching for something to help my Crohn's forever. And I wanted to say, well, if I'm going to try this for 90 days, I want anybody that has Crohn's, that's looking up any type of remedies for Crohn's, to find this channel, and they'll know whether or not they should try this or not. And I could say 100% today, if you have Crohn's or any type of gut issue, this is where it's at. This is what's going to help you.
So now you've been doing it just over 5 months.
Yeah.
And you're still experiencing the same benefits since that third week?
And then some, because of all the energy I got and all the exercise I get to do. And I just started a new mission. I'll be announcing that soon. I'll announce it here. It's no big deal, but I'm actually going to start training for a 5K. I want to start running, and I already do a bunch of adaptive sports, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it to the next level and just show people how much this diet can change your life.
Yeah, I saw you were doing some mountain climbing with a group that also had vision challenges, and I thought that was really interesting and cool that you were doing that. I don't know if that video particularly was before you started this way of eating or after, but you looked like you were just living the life.
Yeah, I was 4 months in on that at that point. And Independently Blind itself is a mentoring program where I educate, advocate, motivate, and inspire. I got a bunch of students that are blind that I'm helping them cope with blindness and kind of learn and motivating them to get out and be active. And through my job, we get to go up to a camp. I'll be speaking there next month. I'm really close with the director up there, and we get them rock climbing. We get them rock climbing, kayaking, paddle boarding, hiking. It's an amazing thing to see, Dante. Like you would be blown away. Those kids you saw in that video go up there, they're totally blind. One of them also has cerebral palsy and was able to go up the side of that mountain. And I couldn't be more proud of those kids, man. It really drives me. They motivate me more than I'm sure I motivate them. Yeah,
well, I think anytime somebody is facing a challenge like that, people can easily say, I got an excuse. Now I don't have to do anything, and kind of wallow in self-pity and misery and whatever else. But to take that difficulty and just totally blow past it and do things that people who don't have that difficulty make excuses not to do is it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see that, and it's beautiful what you're doing with them too.
It's a complete trust thing too, because they can't see, so they're being directed and guided, but they're having to trust that not only they're not going to fall, they're going to be caught, but reach your right hand up and pull yourself up this way. It's just so amazing to see the trust and their faces light up. It really changes their life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely a great thing that you put a hand down to help them up, but you're also teaching them how to pull themselves up. That's so important for someone's self-esteem, or I don't even know if that's the best term, but their own independent feeling of power in themselves, or having the ability to do it, is that they don't have to count on somebody else. They did have somebody that reached out to them, but that'll also give them the strength to reach out to somebody behind them and pull them forward. So that's good too.
Oh yeah.
I love that. So we've already talked about your reason for doing Lion Diet. One thing I was interested in is that you pointed out you still drink coffee. Do you feel like that, maybe if you tried it without that, if it might have any better effects, or are you just so happy with what you're doing you don't want to give up your coffee? This is a sacred cow for a lot of people. I'm not going to talk about this too long, but it's an interesting topic.
No, and I have no problem talking about it, because it's the funny thing. I get made fun of it all the time about it. Well, you're not really carnivore. Well, it's like that's my only hiccup. Everything's beef, salt, and water except for my coffee every morning. It's twofold. I think about it every day. I know that I probably would even be able to take it to the next level if I stop, but it's a mental thing for me too, as it pertains to just all around health. Because with the stricture, I've always used coffee. Coffee's been kind of a supplement to help me pass things through, and I still think it's helping me do that. At least mentally, that's where I'm at. I guess I'm just a little afraid to take that step right now until they open my stricture up more.
I could understand that. Plus, coffee has you got one person saying it's better for you to drink it than to not drink it, and then you got the next person saying that it's got these negative side effects. There's a lot of a mixed bag there. I think the quality of the coffee can make a difference, although it's hard to verify the origin of coffee anyway. Yeah. But it's something that I personally like to avoid, but it's been really hard because my wife is a steady coffee drinker. And one of the things I've been doing to try to help her not be doing things that are negative for herself is I got rid of that plastic coffee maker and got her a stainless steel one. And now when I make the coffee in the morning, so I make sure that she gets it, because it takes 20 minutes instead of 2 minutes like it used to. But I had to say, I'm going to give it a try. Yeah. I said, man, this coffee tastes better.
Not only does it taste better, but you brought up your wife, and it's one of the other reasons I hold on to it as well, because my wife is seeing all this change and she's happy, but she also knows we always go out and have coffee, especially on the weekends. We like going. We went this morning. We went on a run together, and then we went and had our coffee, and she loves spending that time with me. And she's like, "Don't take this away yet. We don't got much left." And I'm like, "I get it, but she knows that it's coming. It's coming. The day's going to come where I am going to try to eliminate the coffee, but for right now, it's something that we do. It's something we share too. So there's kind of a marriage thing there too.
Yep. Well, and then there's the cultural side of it. It's kind of part of American life, just like tea is part of life for a lot of people in the UK. And I know it's like, this is cutting out too much. This is tradition. And I can see how that would be difficult. Well, anyway, I'm not going to push you one way or the other on that. I just thought we would talk about it because you're experiencing the benefits of Lion Diet while still drinking coffee, and you have Crohn's disease, and it's being able to put those things in remission. That's a step in the right direction. So either way, it's a good thing. Tell me about any supplements that you use and how they affect your journey to better health.
So the supplements I use at the moment is I use Element. I did that twice a day. I take those little packets, put in my water twice a day. And it was funny because I was still cramping until I actually caught Dr. Chafee on a podcast, and he was talking about people think that it's the supplement. You just need more water. So I upped my water intake, and I haven't had a cramp since. So thanks, Dr. Chafee. That's why I always encourage people, don't listen to one, listen to many people as you can, get as much information as you can. I'm doing the iodine. I do take iodine supplements. I was taking the Lugers. I just found it more cumbersome. So thanks to you, Dante, I order the pills that you take. I don't know if you still take those iodine pills, but I got some of those just this week, and I started taking those three a day. And that's pretty much it, with the exception of the fact that I do have a prostate issue as well, and I'm on Flomax, which I'm desperately trying to get off.
Well, I've heard some good stuff in that area from other people that have said that they have had that problem be relieved eventually with a carnivore diet or lion diet specifically. So we'll hope for good things in that area. Yeah. And as far as the iodine goes, I do still have the tablets, but I've been experimenting with the liquid form for a while because I was listening to, I can't think of her name. She's a homeopath, and I think she lives in Italy. I just can't think of her name right this moment. I'm sure there's people out there yelling at the screen right now trying to tell me who it is. But exactly. she had talked about the benefits of iodine in liquid form, because when you swallow it, it gets into your sinus passages as well. And occasionally I'll even use a neti pot, and I'll put a couple of drops in there as I'm rinsing out my nasal passage. So it's supposed to be helpful in that regard. I've been trying it out. I haven't really noticed any difference, except that iodine tastes horrible in the liquid form. But
it does.
Overall, just having it, I think, is good, because no matter what diet people are on, I find that people are typically iodine deficient, and they had no idea. Doctors never think to ask about it. It kind of goes back to I think his name is Dr. Brownstein, wrote a book about iodine that I had talked about when I first started mentioning iodine.
Yes.
And I thought it was something that people should look at, because when you're iodine deficient, it affects your thyroid in a negative way, which affects all the hormones in your body. And, when we're already having metabolic disease challenges, then we're definitely going to be having hormonal issues. So being able 100%. To fix that along with fixing your gut, they go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you upped your water, and so are you not using Element as much as before?
Oh, I still take the 2 supplements a day because I'm so active. I work out so much that I want to make sure that I do replace some of those electrolytes. But I just make sure I force myself to drink those extra big. I drink like 32 ounce in a Yeti. I just make sure I'm constantly drinking water, and the cramps are totally gone. I haven't had cramps.
Yeah, I've listened to Dr. Chafee's advice and he's kind of like, well, it depends, because he knows that some people say that they need it. I know early on I needed to have salt added to my water, and I needed the extra electrolyte. Well, I wouldn't say I ever needed the extra electrolytes, but I found that they made me feel better. It was kind of like the same way you just talk about coffee. It gives you a feeling that you're moving in the right direction. So I still use Redmond Relight. I know you use what do they call the Element version of unflavored?
The Element packets. Yeah, the unflavored, yes.
Right. They had a name for their unflavored that was different. But as long as you're keeping some of that junk that's in the sweetened versions out, I think you're doing good. But like lately, I've been, I'm on my 3.5 year of doing this. I haven't been adding salt to my water for a couple of weeks now, and I'm exercising more now than I was over the past year, and I'm not noticing a negative side effect. So I think it's something that, based on what I've listened to Dr. Chafee say, is that maybe you need it initially. I definitely needed it for the first 2 years, but over the past year, I've been back and forth with it, and now I've been doing without it at all for a couple of weeks, and I feel great. So maybe it's something you just need for a short while to get over some of the changes you're going through. I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's a great point too, Dante, because I try to listen to as much information as I can. I love listening to podcasts and stuff more than TV, but I know that the narrative is, hey, start carnivore and everything goes away, and it does. Like we're living proof, right? That's why we're out here advocating for it. But I also believe that there's a mental side to this in our lives, from trauma, from our childhood on, as well as a physical aspect, that if you can get yourself to that next level where you're taking care of some of the mental stuff that you may be dealing with. And you and I, as believers, we believe in a spiritual way of healing too. And, just in a fitness perspective, for all around total health, you can't go wrong. And I think that needs to be talked about a lot too.
Well, let's talk about yours. You had mentioned, let me see here. I had asked on the form that you submitted, please describe your current, no, which one was it? There's one of them on here where you said, I said, please describe any additional positive results you've enjoyed so far. And you started going into your mental and spiritual side. So tell me a little bit about how has a diet, a change in the way you eat, affected you mentally and spiritually?
So it was funny because I was watching Kerry from Homestead How, and he was talking about his, I was no longer depressed. Immediately I had no more anxiety. And I always found that fascinating because, when I started the diet, it's one of the things I was looking for, like this brain fog stuff, right? And I do notice a lot more clarity in the way that I think. And I think that was the beginning stages of the light going on in my head. And it was both revealing and scary at the same time because, I could think more clearly, but it also opened up some of those doors of the things that I've suppressed over the years, the trauma in my life, from all the way from my childhood, from being diagnosed with an eye condition all the way to getting Crohn's disease. Those were very traumatizing points in my life, which obviously create identity issues. It created an anxiety in itself. And, obviously, having all those things, depression was really huge. So it's causing me to think more about where I've been so I can get where I'm going, meaning I got to take care of some of those issues. You think that you tell yourself all the time, oh, I got this under control. I've been doing this for a while. I got it. But the reality is we can't do it alone, which obviously just led me down the path again to my spirituality. I used to work at a church. I used to be a leader and do youth group and stuff like that. And, I've drifted off over the past 8 years, but I find myself now I get up at 5:00 every morning. 4 days a week, I'm here in my studio and I'm in the Word. I'm doing my prayer, my praise. And then, 3 days a week, I run while I'm listening to some scripture in my head. Me and the wife had just started this past Monday a program called Regeneration. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a 12-step program, spiritual program that will help you get closer to God and help take care of some of these issues that you're dealing with. So I find that the clarity led to some of the things that are traumatizing that led me to God. And now I'm using God and everything coming together to help me cope through all of this stuff. And I think it's important because I believe in the carnivore diet and it's made me feel 100% better, but the meat is not going to take that other pain away, that mental pain that I've been holding on to my whole life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would say it, and especially that it affected you in this way so early. I noticed immediately that I started focusing on my spiritual goals that I had been neglecting early on. Mm-hmm. And for the first 3 years, it was gangbusters. And then as I've ran into some difficulties in my personal life, I didn't realize it until just recently. Here I am 3.5 years in, and over the past 6 or 7 months, I'd been struggling with this, like my anxiety was coming back. And I realized that it was because I was facing these challenges that were taking me back to stuff in my childhood that I hadn't addressed yet. Mm. I didn't even think about. I didn't want to think about.
Exactly.
And over the past month, I've been taking myself back into that time period in my mind and letting go of things that I hadn't let go of yet because I hadn't even addressed them. I had pretended they just weren't there.
Exactly.
And that's definitely something I don't think I would have been able to get to if I hadn't had the change in my life in general. Because it was like before this, I felt like I was just trudging through life with the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm carrying it like this big heavy backpack and just waiting on death.
Yeah.
But now that it's allowed me not only to have that change in my feeling about life, to feel like, hey, I love life again. For the first time, in some ways, I love life. Like I was never one to want to get up and go hiking or do anything outdoors because I was like, it's hot out there, first of all. But now, and this is the crazy thing, I love being in the heat. Everybody in Florida is from up north somewhere, so they complain about how hot it is here. And I always joke, I'm like, what the heck did you move here for? You knew it was the Sunshine State. It's hot. And I love to be outside. My wife was always the one that wanted to go out walking somewhere, but here in Florida, I can't hardly get her to go out of the house. And that's amazing to me that I had that new zest for life, and I was really riding on that high for a long time. But being able to come back and address mentally those things that I still hadn't addressed, even though I had that mental high going on and I was working on my spiritual life, it was like a little arrow was saying, okay, you got one more thing you need to do. It's in my brain is why I'm pointing like this. It was saying, you've got to go address this still. And if it wasn't for this, I don't think I would have been able to do that. I'm glad you experienced that mental part so early so that you can.
And I think it's
it.
because I've always been connected with it, because a lot of my mental stuff with the Crohn's and the blindness, it's like an everyday thing. And you could convince yourself that you're okay. I convinced myself for years now that, oh, I've accepted my blindness and I'm good. But all of a sudden, like all these new things are opening up to me, and I find myself just like seeing like, well, there's the brain fog, right? And I want to talk about it a lot more, because I feel like when you start a diet like this and you have such great results, yeah, it's gonna take that depression feeling away from you, right? It's gonna make you more energetic. You're gonna feel better about yourself. You're losing weight. You know, you're liking the way you're looking, but eventually, you know, your why is going to change, right? I mean, a lot of people that start the carnivore diet, they have a very strong why. For me, it's Crohn's disease, and it helped that. And then all of a sudden, you start thinking about all these other things, and I want to keep my why relevant. And if we just focus on diet, I call it the Superman syndrome, to where you get to a point where you think everything's good. Yeah, I can eat a piece of cake. I'll get away with it. I can have one piece of cake. I feel so good. I could just, and we don't realize, because we have all these other hidden traumas, that cake makes us feel even better about that. And we just indulge. I know I was a binge eater, you know, big time, especially when it came to sweets. So, you know, I want to make sure that I'm checking every box to ensure that I don't go back to where I was.
Absolutely, man. That's a great way to put it. Well, that's something I found that was really interesting, because I never thought diet would play such a role. I think for me, it was kind of, I have to be such a gatekeeper for what's going in my mouth, that I started to think about being a gatekeeper for what goes in my ears and in my eyes too. Because, you know, in my youth, I had a porn addiction, and then I had a difficulty with drinking and other substance abuses that were just not healthy for me, but I was able to justify for one reason or another. And being able to let those things go, it's like, that's where the freedom came in. I always thought the freedom that you found in Christ was also related to the freedom that you could kind of do whatever you wanted to do, because he already forgave me, you know? So it's like, I can get away with murder, even though I knew logically that wasn't the case. The way it formulated in my life was, that's what I'm living. I'm living that experience of, I can do whatever I want to do. But I didn't realize what a chained situation I was in when those things dominated my life. It doesn't feel like they dominate your life at the moment. It just feels like you need it and you got to go get it. So you get it and you feel good. But then when you finally break free from it, you're like, man, I was dragging that stuff around with me too. So it is amazing to get past all that. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to find this part of it very interesting, that we're talking about the mental health and the spiritual health side. We 100%. Haven't even touched on your physical changes. Somebody's going to see in the thumbnail that I'm going to come up with the difference there. I need to get something different from you as far as pictures. I have your thumbnail, but I don't want it to be the same thumbnail you used on your 120-day video. So maybe if I can get a couple of those, we can show a before and after, because that's usually what gets people's attention first. They're like, wait, he did that to that in 120 days? That sounds like something I'd like to try.
In one of those pictures, that is my beginning March 1st picture. The other picture to the right, when you're looking at the picture, the one on the right was my 4-month. So I'll send you a 5-month, or I'll do another thumbnail to have both from March 1st till now, because there's been a huge difference just in this last month. So yeah, it's really starting to show.
It's awesome.
And I love it.
Had you struggled with your weight most of your life, or was it just kind of a recent thing?
No, it was more into my 30s. Got diagnosed with Crohn's at 22, had the surgery at 25, and then that was just compiling along with the years of dealing with blindness and the trauma from my childhood, and that carries on, and you find yourself. I obviously, because of lack of energy, I became less active in my life, and I just ate more and more and more. I remember one time I was at an IHOP, and my stepdaughter looked over at me. She says, "You could stop now." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "I could hear you breathing." And like, I wouldn't stop. Like if it was like pancakes and syrup, I would just keep just shoving it in my mouth. And she brought that to my attention. And that's when I started getting in. It was about 30, 31 years old. I don't know if you can see in the back, I got this book. This is kind of my,
yeah, tales from
my
something
wall
there.
it's like Quest of Positivity, and then the Truth, which this has standard American diet. I always got to let people know the diet part of that book is horrible. Don't listen to it. But the fitness part of it, the weights and how it taught me how to lift weights, is amazing. But I started that, and it did help. But again, it was still making my Crohn's sick. So it was taking away some of the weight, but not curing the problem that was getting me there to begin with. And but I got up to as high as 250 at one point in my life. And a year ago, in July, I was probably around 225, 228, and I did an event called Project Athena, where I kayaked and biked from Key Largo to Key West in 3 days. And there's a video I just put up. I think was it? No, I haven't released it. It might have been the one I'm going to release. But it shows a picture of me and I trained for a good 4 or 5 months, but you could see it in my gut. It's just huge. It's bloated. And I was able to do the trip, but I was sick the whole time. I was just fully bloated, never felt comfortable, struggling to get up at 4 every morning to go do this. And I look at myself now, since I did carnivore, and my stomach is flat. I'm energetic, and I'm training just as hard as I did a year ago, but I'm actually getting results now. It's one of the truths, as I like to say, that does this diet work? 100%.
So in your youth, you were leaner in general. You didn't struggle with weight problems in your youth. Okay.
Yeah, I was so hyperactive. My metabolism was off the charts. I was real small and skinny.
Well, the reason I bring that up is I don't know if hyperactivity actually directly correlates with that, because I was hyperactive as well, but I was always the chubby kid. They would like when I was in second grade football, I'm out running around the track. They would make me put a trash bag over my body and put my arms through the holes that I cut out, because they were trying to help me cut back on my weight. But I was so hyperactive that my parents had me on Ritalin, which is, I guess, the older version of Adderall. I don't know much about them. I just know that that's what they gave me because I was a hyper kid. But I was not one to want to get up early and be at things. I was the one who wanted to stay in bed as long as I could. But when growing up in the 70s and 80s, I did get outside a lot more than kids do today. So there was a time when I enjoyed that. But once I got older and heavier and busier and jobs that kept me in the chair far too much, it got easier and easier to sit into that sedentary lifestyle that made it difficult to lose weight when you're eating even a healthy standard American diet, when you're following the rules that they give you, whether it was vegetables or soups or whatever box of some diet plan that somebody was offering. It would work for a few minutes because I was cutting out some of the ultra-processed garbage, but I was eating another version of ultra-processed garbage, so it didn't last very long.
And what do they say? Calories in, calories out. On the carnivore diet, I don't even sweat it. I know what I'm eating. I just eat 2 steaks and I'm good all day.
Yeah. Well, and you're pretty active. Well, the reason I brought that up is that genetically we have some differences, I think, because I struggled with that weight issue when I was younger, and there's going to be people out there that do have that difficulty, and I think I'll always struggle with it, because even in my 3rd year, when I started to cut back on some of the exercise I was doing, and the exercise I was doing wasn't even a lot. It was 3-mile walks, and I was wearing a 40-pound weighted vest, and then I would do push-ups and squats and basic stuff like that, but I wasn't like hitting the gym and hitting heavy weights or anything. But it was doing things that I had just never been able to do. And when I stopped doing that regularly, I noticed that I started to get some of that belly fat back. And here just in the past 3 weeks, I've been rucking again regularly. And it changes my overall feeling of my body. I can feel the muscles in my legs and in my waist and in my hips and everything working when I'm wearing that ruck vest. And I'm like, gosh, why did I ever get away from this? But I mean, I know it had to do with work and times when I was at work. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the exercise makes a difference, but the genetics also makes a difference.
100%. And it's metabolism, right? We're talking metabolism here, because you could be, have more energy than someone else. But if your metabolism's not as high genetically, because, there's people that are extremely skinny. My stepson right now, he's dealing with that. He's like, I want to gain weight. And I said, you got to keep pushing forward because your metabolism's really high. It's just who you are. Mm-hmm. But it goes hand in hand. And that's why I say, like, nothing you do fitness wise or in your life is never going to, you're never going to succeed unless you're taking care of your gut. If there's anything that I found out is what we put in that's where it all starts, is what we eat. So we found the carnivore diet. It's totally opened up all these doors, but when you start implementing the fitness and the mental health side of things, you'll really see your quality of life as a whole, your marriage, your personal life, you as a coworker, you as a friend, all of it just gets better and better and better. And that's what I'm experiencing right now. And I'm really enjoying the ride.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a thing there that I want to be able to tell people. The diet did everything, but as I'm going on and I'm learning is, yes, it changed everything. If it wasn't for the diet, I wouldn't have been able to make the steps that I've made physically. I wouldn't have been able to make the steps I've been able to make mentally or even spiritually. The diet was the genesis of it. But I'm also a human, which means I'm mortal, and I'm getting older every day. So every day that I get older, I'm moving into a process where my body is not doing cellularly what it did when I was younger. So I'm constantly fighting that. We're always going to be fighting something. That's not like the diet's going to turn us into literally Superman, but it makes us feel like it because of the way we were so burdened with all of the other stuff we had before. And being able to exercise, I think you have a responsibility to get out and do it when you're able to do it. Just like, most things that we consider rights, they come with a responsibility that you have to exercise with them. Freedom of speech to me is very important, but you got to be responsible in what you say. You don't run into a movie theater and yell fire or something like that. A lot of times they use that argument to limit your freedom of speech even more, but it's just trying to say, you got to be responsible with it. But when you start legalizing that responsibility, we get into a problem area. Well, it's the same thing for our health situation, is that if we're able to do certain things, even if we're not able, we should push ourselves to be closer to able. Like somebody who maybe has a broken hip or a difficulty walking, they don't want to use that as an excuse never to try to walk. That means they just got to push a little harder. Some folks have to push just to get out of their chair. But push yourself, because you're going to atrophy if you don't. In whatever area it is in, your body or your mind is going to atrophy if you're not pushing to be forward more, to move forward with your health or your life, whatever it is, because life is going to do that to you if you don't do anything about it. And changing your diet, to me, was the key to really unlocking the potential to every step in the process.
Yeah. Yep. And I will even add to that too, when we talk about fitness and getting out and being active and moving your body, we're not necessarily saying that you have to wear a rucksack and go 3 miles on a walk or hit the gym and lift a bunch of heavy weight and sit-ups and go on 5K runs. You don't have to do all of that. You just have to go for a nice walk. Just do the simple stuff. Keep your body mobile. And then, if you feel the urge that you want to take it to the next level, do it. Everybody's journey is different.
Absolutely.
Some people want to work out in the gym. Some people don't. But as long as you're just staying active and living your best life, that's where change will happen.
Yeah, no doubt. And then I think one more thing I would probably like to add to that too is, don't let that be an excuse to regress in what you've been doing. Because I've been in that situation recently, and I've been in that situation in my life many times in the past, where I'd exercise for maybe a 6-week period and then I would just stop, and it's like, well, all of the gains are going to be lost again, because just a couple of months out of the gym or a couple of weeks out of doing what you've been doing is a big negative for you. So push yourself to do what you can, and realize that if you're going to get better, you should probably push yourself just a little bit more, because now you're better.
And that usually happens when you start to see the change, right? I mean, it's always that first step. I think I said in one of my videos, a journey of 1,000 miles always starts with one step. So it's that first step that really counts. And it was just like the diet. You chose to say, you know what, I'm going to try this, and then you start slowly seeing the change, and that just inspires you and motivates you more to stay on the diet. It's the same with fitness. Take that first step out the door. Go for a 5-10 minute walk, and you're going to say, oh man, that actually felt pretty good. And it's going to make you want to go the next day. And then next thing you know, you're doing 3 miles, 4 miles, and maybe you want to run, maybe you want to take it to the next level. But as long as you're just taking that one step, you'll know what you need to do.
So I think it's a big challenge for some people, especially if they come from what I like to think of as a lazy lifestyle, because I look at my own life and I'm hypercritical of myself, especially because I do want to be better. I've always wanted to have a body that I could be proud of. I always felt like if I could just unzip this fat suit I'm in and take it off, I could feel like I'm actually supposed to be. But taking those steps to just be consistent with something, even if it's low impact, starting with some consistency is so important for us to have good habits built in our life, and that we're allowing our brain to get positive reinforcement from something you're doing that's healthy, as opposed to getting reinforcement from something you're doing that's unhealthy. Like you mentioned, quitting smoking, and I mentioned quitting several of the vices that I've dealt with. Those vices were giving me positive reinforcement to do them because they had a drug involved that would give me dopamine, that would tell me this is a practice I should keep doing. Well, it was a negative practice, though. It was not helping me. Whereas when you're doing something like you're moving in the right direction physically, and you're making the steps to each day say, okay, I don't feel like getting up this morning and doing it, but I'm going to go do it because I need to. I need to stay in the habit. That helps move us in the right direction overall. Now, we've talked about the changes you've had mentally, spiritually, and physically. Talk to me about the challenges that come from dealing with others, other people, societal interaction, going out to eat, maybe even living with somebody who's not participating in exactly what you're doing. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenges a lot of us face, is how to adapt in our lives this lifestyle to those who are not in this lifestyle.
It's such a great question too, Dante, because it's so loaded. So here we go. On a funny note, just to lighten the mood a little bit, I guess I have one advantage. I don't always see the facial expressions, so I don't have to deal with that as much. But I hear and I tie it a lot to, and I think I'm able to handle it a little bit more because of the spirituality part of it. Like I said, I've been in ministry, and I know that when you're trying to minister to people, right? I learned early on that, your life tells your story, your actions, what you do tell your story more than what you say. So, I mean, that's even a deeper conversation, but I know that if I just keep living it and they ask the question and then I give them the answer, I already know most people are not going to like my answer. Well, what about your heart? What about your cholesterol? And they start asking all these questions, and I say, you know what? I tell them about my channel. Go follow my story. I tell them a lot. I've told a couple of people at work recently, I could sit here for 30, 45 minutes and really explain to you, but I'll be honest, I'm not the science nerd. Like, I'm not going to be able to give you all the numbers that you can find online. I said, but if you follow my story and you follow my journey, you're going to see the difference in me. You're going to see the changes. I pull up my phone because that's the only way right now. I'm trying to figure out how to pull my blood work off Kaiser Permanente so I could show it on the channel. And Kaiser is kind of giving me a bad. I want more blood work, and they won't do it. So because of the book that you recommended through that wonderful offer, his name's Daniel. He put it on audio for me.
Daniel Trevor, yeah.
So I've been listening to that book finally, and I love it. I'm going to order some blood tests and have more results and things, but I want to, we have to show them a lot of it's what we live outwardly that gets people's attention. And it's hard for them. They've been told their whole life through school, in books, in government, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole, government. But when they tell us something, we feel like we have to be sheep and follow. but that's not the reality. But if we live our, if we're showing good things that are happening in our lives, the weight loss, the fitness, that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I very rarely, and I'm very humble when I say this, but I very rarely just do things for myself. I really do aim to educate, advocate, motivate, and inspire others. So, doing the running, challenging myself to do a 5K, and we'll see where that goes, is really to inspire the kids that I work with to be like, hey, I'm doing it. I have a meeting next week with the kids, and I'm challenging them to go on a run with me on November 3rd. So, I mean, those are the types of things that push me forward. And if I could live it outwardly, then people are going to be more inquisitive on not only what I'm doing, but believe more in what I'm doing because I'm actually showing results.
I would equate that to something an old evangelist friend of mine used to say. He said, there are 5 gospels? And people would always say, it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's only 4. There's not 5.
Yeah.
And he'd say, no, there is a 5th gospel. It's you. You're a Christian. You are the 5th gospel. They're not listening to what you're saying. They're looking at the results in your life. They're looking at the fruits in your life. They're looking at what it is. If you're wearing a shirt that says I'm a Christian, or maybe I'm wearing one of my chosen shirts or something like that, and I'm out there acting like a real jerk to people in public, then people who are not believers are going to look at that and say, oh, is that what it's like to be a believer? Well, that kind of reminds me of my abusive stepfather. I don't think I want to be a part of that. But if, you're treating people with dignity and respect, and you're using the principles that Jesus gave us and how to deal with enemies and adversaries and problems like that, it makes them go, how are you able to turn your cheek? How are you able to not react to somebody acting the fool like that? What is it about you that's different? And then you have an opportunity to present the gospel to them. So it's very similar, I think, in that regard, in that you're living the example by having your health physically changed. And the arguments about blood work and stuff like that is very similar to me, where somebody wants to come and give me their scientific argument for why the Bible is not true or something like that. And I think to myself, you're just giving me a whole different religion. You're not really arguing using what you think are facts against what I think is faith. You're just giving me your religion against what I believe is true. So it's it's the same concept. And then when you start talking about blood work too, one thing I always have to tell people who are in the carnivore way of eating is you got to remember blood work, the numbers of normal are based on what's normal within the current population. And if you go back to the 1950s and look at pictures of people at the beach, you can see there's a different normal 80 years ago or 74 years ago than right now, because most people weren't suffering from metabolic disorders that had them extremely overweight, and with a lot of the other problems that people are exhibiting that we have today. So our normal is a very distorted form of normal. So even when you get numbers that are normal, it's like, well, what does that really mean for me? So there's still a lot of question marks when I get numbers. I try to still get blood work done because I want to be able to have some ammunition for these people, but I don't think the answer is necessarily there as much as it is, like you said, living that healthy life. Look at me. Do I look healthy, or do I look healthy in this picture from 3 years ago?
Because obviously you noticed something was different about me to begin with. That's why you asked the question. You saw I had a steak on my plate, but you didn't put that. You just thought I was having steak for lunch. But then you ask, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. You look good. What's going on? Well, since you asked, there's a steak on my plate, right? And I get the same question, the remarks about the Apple Watch and me tracking my fitness and my steps. They're like, those are just averages. So is blood work. Blood work is just an average, right? It's going to be different for everybody because we're all genetically different to begin with. It's just a measuring tool to kind of keep you in a certain range. You're not supposed to put a lot of faith in your blood work as much as your Apple Watch. That's why, as believers, we put our faith in Jesus and we let our life just show, if I'm feeling good, then I must be good, right? If I'm not feeling well, I may need something to help me feel well. So I'm a big, when it comes to just living my life outwardly, I think that's the best way. I've been on the other side where I've tried to talk the Bible to people, and I've had even family members say, well, you come off like you know it all, and that's not my intention. So It's because I'm striking a nerve and making you feel a certain way. So instead of telling you all the time, I'm going to show you, right?
Yeah.
I will just show you through my actions and the way my life is working. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, that really touches on a lot of the things I think people are going to deal with. And it is interesting how you talked about your blindness gives you a step up, because I know I am very perceptive to negative emotion. I took one of Jordan Peterson's personality tests, and I was like 74% on the neurotic side of things. And I thought, man, that's a lot of baggage to have to carry around all the time. But I also noticed things like they talk about studies where they took pictures of people in the stage of going from a smile to slowly situating their face to where they're frowning. And most people only begin to notice that it's switching to a frown about 70% of the way through the process. But people that tend to score high on neuroticism will begin to notice the switch by 30%. So it's like they're more perceptive of negative things, and it makes it very insecure in a lot of ways. And that's another thing I like to say that I've been able to really work on, is insecurities that I like to pretend I didn't have, because it was like a bravado I had to use to push through it and, not feel those insecurities. But now it's like the insecurities are less have a hold on me, because I'm not needing all these outside sources of something to overcome my emotional instability or whatever it was. And I also wanted to comment on how you had said that you rather do something for other people. I don't know if it was always the case, but I know in my situation, my propensity was self-pleasure. Like I was a Jimmy Buffett parrot head. I was all about whatever was living the good life. And that was kind of where my pursuit was. And I've noticed as I've let that go, I'm far happier, because I'm able to do things that are more for other people as a result of that. So I would encourage anybody who's on that lifestyle of me, it's going to make you more miserable in the long run when you're constantly focused on yourself. But when you're focused on what you can do for others, or what your example can mean for others, then you're not focused on trying to change anybody, for one. You're just focused on doing what you believe is right and letting that speak for itself. It's going to give you an internal boost. It's going to give you encouragement. It's going to give you a passion to move forward, but it's also going to inspire others. And there is no better feeling, I think, than being able to help somebody out of their suffering by the example that you're setting.
In fact, you'll get better results for having that frame of mind, because a lot of the times, we start a diet because we don't feel well. We want to lose weight. We don't like the way we look.
Yeah.
But if you start to think outwardly again, right? And you have to start with yourself. You have to be happy with yourself. So definitely focus on yourself. But if you could find that place inside you where you take that me feeling and learn to give it back. Again, that's why I give a big shout out and credit to everybody who puts their life out here on YouTube and tells the story, because you're taking that me complex and now you're putting it out to other people. And it doesn't matter what your channel is, what it's about, what you talk about. It is your story, and your story is inspiring. You need to understand that first and foremost. So you're helping somebody. You may not know it, you may never know it, but you helped somebody. Somebody watched your video and they said, there was something you said, something you showed that inspired them to either start it or take it to the next level themselves. So, and that always comes from, living outwardly and not inwardly.
And that's the very reason why I'm doing these carnivore conversations. I think there's two reasons. One is I feel like it's always just about me if I'm just sitting here in front of a camera telling my story. But the other part of it is it helps people to be able to get past it mentally, that they're doing something weird when they have more and more people coming out and telling their story, like you have about being able to put your Crohn's into remission the way you have, and to be able to overcome other challenges even better as a result of that, to lose the weight, to be able to focus your attention on your philanthropy work that you do with these blind children.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that are going to help people. And I'm glad to be able to have you here to be a part of what we're doing here on Ferrigno Freedom Channel, to be able to spread the news about this, because it's really every once in a while I feel like I've talked about it enough. I don't need to talk about this anymore. But then all I got to do is go to town or go to the Walmart and I can look around and I can see, no, I got to keep talking about this. There's a lot of people out here who still don't have any clue that carnivore is the way it is. But I'm also encouraged that I'm finding more and more people in random public that are telling, I'm finding out they are on the carnivore way of eating. And I don't like bring up my channel or anything like that. I just, sometimes it's like, oh, wow, we got something we can talk about. Yeah, I love eating steak. I love eating lamb chops because it's like my version of chicken wings or something. But I went to a school the other day to interview for a teaching position. And I got to talking to one of the ladies in the office there, and I could hear her talking to other people, and they mentioned something about how she doesn't eat vegetables and she doesn't eat this or that. And then I said, are you on a carnivore diet? Yeah, me and my husband for the past 6 weeks, and it's changed everything. So that's really cool to be able to hear. So let me ask you one thing before we go. What advice would you give to anybody who was in your position where you had Crohn's disease? Maybe not even the blindness side of it, although I would love to hear that this had some benefit in the near future on your site. You never know. Yeah. It's amazing what all these things, the Lion Diet has cleared up for people. But let's just say from the Crohn's disease position, and maybe feeling like you used to be in shape, but you're not in shape anymore. What would be your advice to people who were in that same boat you were in?
Just listen. Listen to your body. Get to understanding who you are as an individual, who you want to be, and then identify your why. For me, it's always been about my why. Why was Crohn's disease? I know that at the core of everything that I was, even beyond my blindness, right? My blindness has been there. I can't change what's happened to my eyes. But the fact that I found something that I felt was going to change how I felt as a whole, it intrigued me. And when I started it started off, I started off as a skeptic, right? I wanted to see, I'm going to give it the 90 days. And it's no longer the carnivore diet, right? It's the carnivore lifestyle. And not only should you make that first step, again, a trip of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Tell your story. Because I know there's a lot of people that I was told early on that Crohn's disease, if you didn't have it by 25, you were clear. My brother, they're thinking that he may have Crohn's. I met another guy at work that just got diagnosed with Crohn's, and he's 35. So I don't think that's the case. So the more that we could put this type of information out there, it gives reference to somebody like me who typed in one day, cures for Crohn's disease or diets for Crohn's disease. And it set me down this path that led me down to the carnivore diet. And the first video I found was Dr. Barry talking to Kent Carnivore. And Kent Carnivore didn't have Crohn's disease, but he had ulcerative colitis, which I've dealt with in the past, because with Crohn's, ulcerative colitis comes. And this gentleman went through the ringer. He still is, right? With his colon and everything. And when he said, oh man, it's still helping me. And I'm like, well, I don't want to end up like Kent, Right. And it's helping him after he went through this. It's got to help for Crohn's. And that's when I said, I'm going to take that first step, So just finding that why, focusing in on it, wanting the change. You got to be ready for the change. Focus on your why and take that first step. As far as the blindness goes, you got to have faith. For me, it's always been my faith in Jesus. And if you don't have faith, then I'm not going to tell anybody your spirituality is your spirituality. But for me, my faith is everything. And I know in my eyes, this diet is not going to cure what's already happened. But I'm hoping that it's going to either slow it down or stop it from progressing. So that is something I will definitely be keeping an eye on. No pun intended there. And I will share it, where if my vision gets any worse or better,
That's fantastic. Well, stick with me after the end here. I want to talk to you a little longer. Folks, Jason Smith, you can find him on YouTube at Independently Blind 5816. I've got it in the title underneath your picture here, so it's been on the entire video, so more people will know how they can check in on you, because I'm sure there's some blind folks out there or people with sight issues that are also going through some of the problems that you experienced, and never hurts to have somebody that you can really relate to be able to turn to for some advice and some guidance. And I think Jason is he's well on his way to being one of those guides for us in not only the carnivore community, but also in the blind community. And that's a wonderful thing. It's been a pleasure having you on today, Jason.
Pleasure being here, Dante. Thank you. You've been so inspirational, especially spiritually for me. So thank you.
Thank you as well.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?